In the urban space, I see on the energy side, one of the biggest challenges is mobility. The aspiration and lifestyle that permits us to aspire for an individual car, it's a huge challenge and it's completely undoable. It's not an aspiration that has any roots in a real future. And yet the fact that if we say, okay, we should not aspire to a personal car, it's seen as a negative and there is no real positive script there. So that's another huge challenge. And of course, the biggest challenges are houselessness, lack of entitlement, simple existence of unserviced large quarter settlements and so on. So these are really the big ones. But water also remains a big challenge. I have felt uncomfortable in high theory without practice, almost in any field, including philosophy, for example, which is considered a bastion for theory, you would say. You know, the whole business of the mind and the body being two different things. I just feel they are part of the same system. So clearly, no practice can exist without theory, and vice versa. And unless this duality is properly recognized and given importance, we will never really produce anybody. The initial students will have to be fairly confident and self-motivated and should we say confident really that they would be able to engage themselves and employ themselves in fairly productive, useful ways in society. So that on the one side they can be psychologically and mentally satisfied that they are doing useful, real, good work, but also earn enough to actually subsist and not simply change their line of profession or throw in the towel, as it were. Quite a few of them would find lucrative employment in what might be called areas which are not really designed for making big change. For example, private real estate. A lot of them would be picked up by development corporations. Some would teach and do research. Some would join municipal bodies. But I'd like to watch those of them who become mid-level ESCOs or people who provide water services or contractors or those who might join community-based organizations and NGOs and actually set up actually small consultings for being able to get grants from say JNM kind of projects to be able to implement real urban change in their neighborhoods. So those are the kind of students I'd like to watch out for. I do believe that it is very tough to be interdisciplinary. So a lot of us profess to be so, but we want to withdraw in our shells when we are actually brought face to face with the real interdisciplinary discussion. And so that has to be constantly challenged. I think the biggest one that I'm not sure how we are going to get around or get our teeth into is multiple languages. First of all, we are talking about probably some degree of international faculty. So first of all, there are non-English foreign languages that we have to deal with, because we'll have faculty from Brazil who may not be good at English but at Portuguese. Then we have students who may not be good at English. They may have a smattering of English in order to have that discourse. Then we have computer systems in which you will have to have either automatic or partially controlled translation. And yet I cannot deny that all this is necessary. Well, IIHS is planning to be in some ways a mass institution, and I think to engage with large numbers of people, you actually need to change the way that you handle top-down technological management, and that's clearly something that is not going to work for very much longer. So that's one whole area. Then the fact that we do not understand micro planning and micromanagement unless the people who are affected by it are actually owners of that process itself points a way towards the participatory nature of the way IIHS will be. But it's not just participatory, there's a lot of collaboration required, which means that is to say as opposed to participatory where you are talking of large numbers of say non-technical general lay persons interacting, in collaborative work we are talking about a large number of experts interacting and trying to talk each other's language and understanding, for example, that water is related to malaria, is related to health, is related to engineering, is related to society, is related to politics and all the rest. So I think IIHS today is in a position to actually state that. They call it the interdisciplinary method. it intends very seriously to develop this method, and there have been periods in the past where schools have done this. For example, the Bauhaus and the crafts movement in the 1920s in Europe did this fairly successfully for over 10 years. Uh, a lot of architecture schools today can be called reasonably interdisciplinary in their limited area of building and object design. And there are many other design schools which are quite interdisciplinary as well. And there are interdisciplinary professions. For example, filmmaking is a very interdisciplinary profession. There is a storytelling on the one side, society, politics, the craft of uh, filmmaking, the science and the technology of filmmaking, and audio recording, and so on. So we have examples, and I think we are drawing from them to bring up a curriculum that will actually be fairly interdisciplinary in a useful sort of way, and not just in name.